You want your business to stand out in a crowded marketplace? Well, there's something you can do that's incredibly simple, incredibly easy, so easy that anyone can do it, and yet so few people are actually doing it. Hey, my name's Blake Benz. I'm the host of the Good Advice Podcast, and we're going to talk about this conversation of a little bit of marketing, a little bit of sales, and more importantly, beyond all these things, we're going to be talking about reputation today. Now that I've caught your attention with my snazzy little clickbaity title, I guess, we're going to talk about the magic of growing a business all around doing what you say you will do and why this is more compelling than any offer you could possibly do in your brand. Before we dive in, we have a word for one of the incredible businesses that sponsors the podcast. Check out this quick ad and we'll be back soon. There's one single piece of advice that I give to business owners who are ready to scale their business drastically. And that's knowing exactly what you need to hand off so that you can continue focusing on what you're an expert in. It amazes me when I talk to business owners who are doing their own bookkeeping and tax prep, and worse, that they're going through all this paperwork at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, even midnight, slaving away trying to make sense of all of the numbers for their business. Business owners who are making it happen have already figured out that you can't do it all yourself. That's why I recommend Steve Lay with Equity Business Solutions. Not only is he an expert in bookkeeping and tax prep, but what I love about Steve is that he'll sit down with you and help you make sense of the value of your business beyond just reading a spreadsheet. You'll be able to make better decisions, and more importantly, you're going to save yourself the crucial time you would have spent going through QuickBooks or an Excel spreadsheet or whatever it is that keeps us up late at night. So save yourself some time and some money by giving Steve Lay a call at Equity Business Solutions, and he'll show you the value beyond your numbers. Go to equitybusinesssolutionsllc.com to find out more. So whenever you started your business, you probably had some aspirations or values for how you were going to do your business. It's funny to me, I see people who get into entrepreneurship because they had like a terrible boss or they feel like they were abused by the company they worked for. And so in some ways, it's kind of like sticking it to the man of like, I'm going to go start my own business. I'm going to do it my own way. Now, I have an opinion on that kind of thing. I've talked a lot about if you're going to make it long-term in business, it can't be about you. It has to be about your customer. But all that to say, that is why some of us get into entrepreneurship. For other ones of us, we have a genuine idea. We have a problem we want to solve. We're curious maybe around not only could I sell this, but could I make a little bit of money doing so? But despite whatever reason you get into business, it's almost non-existent, or I don't even know if it's fair to say rare. I've just never heard anyone say this before. It's pretty rare that someone gets into business with the idea of saying, I'm going to offer a crappy product, I'm going to offer a crappy service, and I'm going to try to make as much money as possible. Now, I'm not saying there aren't people out there who think that, and they, put lipstick on the pig, they dress it up, they get it looking as good as they possibly can, knowing that it's a scam, that it doesn't have value, it's a low quality offer, what have you. And then they pitch it to as many people as they can. They, sell the moon to someone, and they spend more time trying to keep their card processor from dropping them than actually offering a meaningful product. If you don't believe me, you probably haven't bought much online, because there are swindlers at every turn. There's swindlers at every corner. But it's rare when I have conversations with business owners who are just getting into entrepreneurship where they're like, yeah, crappy product, crappy service, I'm all about it. What most people say is, I want to do something that no one's ever done before. I want to offer something that has deep value to it. I've seen my competition and I know I can do it better. Now, I will say that sometimes this is a key flaw in our thinking, in that we think we're going to do it better, and then we actually offer it, do it, sell it, what have you, and we realize, no, it's actually not better at all. I think about someone who has like, a bad experience at a restaurant, and they're like, I'm going to start a restaurant, but they know nothing about the restaurant industry. And so they take out the massive loan and they have all their cash saved aside and they go out of business within a year or 2 years, surprised that it didn't work when really it wasn't that the idea wasn't a good aspirational idea. It's that their idea of how good the quality of the product was very different from the actual quality of the product. But many of us, when we start a business, that's our thinking is, I want to do it the right way. I want to start a business the right way. We are, or at least that's how we talk about it, right? I think we're very good at lying to ourselves when we start to honestly look at the quality of services that we begin to deliver. Now, before I get into that, so far, if you're listening, especially if you're a first time listener, you're probably thinking like, yeah, dude, there's nothing new about what you're saying. Of course, I'm not going to go start a crummy business with a crummy product. However, you'd probably be surprised, or maybe you wouldn't, depending on how, business savvy or cynical you are. It wouldn't be the first time in history where a business willingly offers a crappy product or service, knowing that people will buy it. And I'm not even talking about scammers. I'm talking about a number of businesses that they know they can do better. And the reason they don't do better is because they know that it's infinitely more profitable to not fix that problem, to not improve the quality of the service, and instead to eat the pain of customer dissatisfaction because they know overall they're going to make more money, not do anything about it. Let's be more specific here. One example that comes to mind is Boeing. Boeing had the issue with the 737 MAX airline or plane. They've been in the limelight quite a bit for something around like low quality, I don't want to say low quality materials, but not having the best practices any longer. And the conversation around this is, well, when Boeing, there was the whole like whistleblower thing, who the whistleblower then killed themselves, and there was a whole conspiracy around that, which I'm not even really getting into that today. But point being, we had this whole conversation around Boeing, and you are naive if you think that Boeing was discovering these details around the quality of their planes just as we were discovering it. You are naive if you think that when the headline, the news story came out about Boeing, that a Boeing executive, a CEO or whoever was like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. You're naive if you think that that's how it worked. What typically works in these conversations is, unfortunately, these large, massive brands, they do what's called a cost analysis, or they look at the cost versus risk of a certain flaw or an issue or something not delivering as they envisioned it. And what they essentially look at is, what is better for our bottom line? What is better for our brand in terms of financial ROI, in terms of the revenue to our business, the profit really to our most senior members in the brand overall? What they do a cost analysis. And typically what happens in these large organizations is they say, it's actually going to be cheaper to deal with lawsuits that may never happen. And I want to say sanctions. Sanctions is not the right word. What's the word I'm thinking of? Fines. It's going to be cheaper to deal with lawsuits and fines than it will be to do this over again and do it the right way. There's not a lot of ethical decision making, I don't think, at the highest level. Now, I think this isn't like a broad brush for all organizations or even all corporations. The book, oh man, what's it called? Good to Great by, I can't think of the author's name. He talks about the level 5 leader, though. One of my favorite books. I don't know why I can't think of the author. One of the things he talks about is there are incredible leaders out there. You just don't ever hear about them. They're not seeking the limelight. They're not seeking the spotlight. And more importantly, they're not making a big show of these moral, ethical decisions because they're just simply focused on doing the right thing. So they exist. I'm not anti-corporation or anti-small, large business, but I do think that it is relatively common. I don't think Boeing is a random occurrence. We've seen this happen in a number of industries a number of times over and over again. We've seen this in the automobile industry, and I'm trying to think of oh man, what was it like in the 2010s? There was a car dealer that had like a faulty something, like golly, I'm totally blanking on this example. Maybe like I can't remember. This is a terrible example because I can't think of the actual details around it, but there was a car dealership, it's on the edge of my mind, a car maker where something was faulty about it and it caused fatalities. People died. I don't want to guess the name of the car dealer because I don't want to besmirch the wrong car dealer. But the car dealer knew that this part of their car was faulty. Now, obviously, they didn't want people to die. They're not like, a mustache twirling villain at the top of these companies. But what they've determined internally is rather than recall every car, it's going to be cheaper to pay out the lawsuits and the fines than it will be to actually fix this. Now, this is a whole separate conversation on, there is, you're not going to take someone to jail for this kind of decision. And I think that's part of the reason why when like massive fraud or these massive pain points happen in these large organizations, why there's not really ever any meaningful accountability. It's like pay the fine and just move on. But bringing this back to the point of our conversation, a number of industries do it. You think about home builders who build new homes. I've been watching this guy on YouTube. I've seen a couple of them who they do content around inspecting new inspections. And he made this point just the other day of, you'd be surprised going into a new home. It should be pristine. How could the builder just willingly put these mistakes in it? Because the builder knows that on average, math-wise, it's going to be cheaper to let someone bring up this mistake in the house, to ask for it to be fixed, to even pay a lawsuit or pay a fine, than it will be to actually do it over and do it the right way. So here's the rub for our conversation today. And maybe this makes me a bad business person because I guess you would look at these large corporations and say, yeah, they're making millions, tens of millions, billions of dollars. They know how to do business. So we should be emulating those people, right? And so I guess I'm outing myself as not being very smart in business because I'm going to encourage you to do something different. I'm going to encourage you to do something opposite from that. I was meeting with a business owner earlier this week, Ben Rowell, who owns a plumbing company here in Northwest Arkansas. And we were talking about just how he differentiates himself, how he, approaches business different from his competitors. And he said, you know what? Here's what's wild. If we just answer the phone, we're already doing better than 90% of our competition. Just answering the phone is already differentiating ourselves. But he gave me three rules that he lives by for his plumbing company. 1, answer the phone. 2, show up on time. This is, by the way, talk about PTSD on this specific data point. I haven't had cable in years, but do you guys remember? I don't know if it's still like this way. If you guys have cable, you'll have to let me know if it's still like this. But you remember the days where you would have to get your cable fixed and you'd get like the appointment set and they'd be like, yeah, make sure you're available. And then like the time gap was something ridiculous. It was like, yeah, make sure you're available on Wednesday from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Or sometimes even worse. Sometimes it was just 8 to 8, like this 12-hour block. And God forbid you ever leave the house. You're not allowed to. You have to be there. You have to answer the phone because the tech's going to call you when they're on their way. And if you don't answer the phone, they're going to cancel the appointment and go on somewhere else. You've totally lost the appointment now. So showing up on time is a big one. And then this last one, do what you say you're going to do. So I'll say that again. The three principles that have allowed this plumbing company to differentiate itself from its competitors: answer the phone, show up on time, do what you say you're going to do. And I would personally even add, do what you say you're going to do at the price you said you were going to do it. It doesn't mean that, things pop up that you didn't expect for. Hey, I know I said it was going to be this. I got into it. Here, you can look at this. Here's actually what it's going to cost. This is what it's going to look like. But too often, I see this especially in the contract world, someone puts out a quote or they're trying to win the bid. And so they have the number way down. And then once they secure the bid, it's like, oh, hey, actually, it's going to be this much. It's a little bit of a swindling that happens. All this to say, answer the phone on time, do what you say you're going to do. This seems in direct contrast with how the big brands are doing it. These massive organizations are doing it. When I get help from Comcast, it is incredibly different from my experience from Ozarks Go, our local internet company. They are two totally different experiences. Why does this happen on a corporate scale, but yet the local scene is so much different? I think the takeaway for us today is understanding that, first of all, you don't have the massive reach that some of these brands have built up over the years. I do believe that these companies probably started doing it the right way. And as they got large enough, it became about shareholders and stock prices and, the bottom line and what have you. And I think that's where we find people who say, yeah, you know what, that one brand, it's not how it used to be. Man, I remember back in the day, they were really, excuse me. Back in my day, they were really a great company. Man, they've really changed. One second, I'm coughing again. I guess I get riled up, man, talking about this stuff. For you in your small business, when I say small, you could be just starting out. Maybe you have a handful of customers, but really when I say small, I'm thinking of anybody under $1 million in revenue. And honestly, even beyond that, you're still small. Under 5 million in revenue, you're still a small business. As a small brand, you are a little fish playing sometimes in a very big pond. Sometimes your competitors are those large, massive brands. And I talk a lot about shopping local and investing in your local businesses. But beyond that, if you are a business owner and you've asked yourself, man, how do I differentiate myself? How can I eat away or get into that slice of pie that these larger corporations own? Or more importantly, if you are in a heavily competitive industry, let's go back to the plumbing company's rule of three. And that specific data point, do what you say you will do. I said in our intro, we're going to talk about reputation today. And this is less about the cheesy, reputations built over a lifetime. It can be gone in a moment. It's less about that. And it's more about, maybe this is sappy, silly. I don't know. You have a moral obligation to do for your customer what they've trusted you to do. It's not to say that sometimes signals don't get crossed. It's not to say that sometimes you don't have a customer who they thought they were buying something. And then as you got into the deal, you're like, you thought you were getting this from me? I remember I had a guy who bought a consulting package from me, and we got into one of the things that came up a lot in the sale was he was like, we're going to do this together, right? Because he was insistent on, I don't want to buy a course. We're going to do this together. And I was like, well, yeah, of course we're going to do this together. Well, once we got into actually working together, we both realized he meant someone coming and running his business with them. He had never bought a consultant before. He didn't know what this looked like. I had never had someone who expected that from me. So I I didn't in our original conversation disqualify that as an option, but we had two very different understandings of what this process was going to look like. It's not to say that that won't happen. It will happen. You'll have customers that weren't great customers. You'll have customers that you realize in hindsight, man, I did not do as good a job as I should have. I was distracted. I didn't give it the right attention. I thought I was delivering a great quality product. I now know 5 years later, ooh, wow, I am so much better today than I was back then. All this stuff is this is all part of the process. And I'm over talking about this stuff because I don't want someone to mix my words with saying that you don't have space to grow, learn, or even make mistakes. You are human. That will happen. But your baseline should be a moral, ethical obligation. Someone has given you money, they've given you their dollar, and you have a responsibility now to now give back the product or service that they've asked for as close to how you've both understood what this deal should look like. And if you can't do that, if you realize that you're not able to do that, that's when you talk about refunds. Let me give you your money back. Hey, I missed the mark here, yada, yada. But if you can make that your baseline and you genuinely are selling something that people have shown that they want. So I'm not talking about you have a moral compass and you are selling small glass vials of sand from your backyard. No one's probably buying that. And if they are, they're probably a little weird. But if you have something to sell that there is a history of it being bought, even better from you, and you have that moral guiding North Star, I'm going to do what I said I was going to do. I'm going to price it fairly or price it according to what I genuinely think it's worth. I guarantee you, you will make it in business. Doesn't mean it'll be easy. Doesn't mean it'll happen overnight. But I've talked about this a lot on the podcast. Success in business is actually very little about being the best of the best. Now, please improve yourself, get better, try to become the best of the best. I want people 10 years from now to come back and say, man, Blake, you are one of the best podcasts out there. Man, Blake, your business sense is spot on. Man, Blake, you are with Podcastable. The shows you guys are producing, it's incredible. There's nothing like it. Now, there's a hunger for that to happen. Will I make that happen? I don't know. I mean, I guess it depends on how many hours of sleep that I decide I want to have in a given night. So it's not about getting better. It's about simply having this guiding principle. I'm going to do what's right for people. I'm going to do what I said I was going to do. And if that is your MO, you're going to make it. Don't be distracted by the high dollar amount, by the greed and the laziness that your competition is doing and indulging in. The temptation is you see your competitors who are being lazy and they're making a lot of money. And it's like, well, what the heck? What am I doing? I just need to do what they're doing. No. Understand, and I've been in business for 6 years. I've worked with a number of businesses. Understand that there really is such a thing as intense short-term success. There are people who are going to find ways to make sales and earn cash enormously in the short term, but who will not make it in the long term. So don't let your marathon be intimidated, or rather, don't be motivated by someone's 8-second sprint when you know this is a long-term journey, or however long you want the journey to be. You know, if you're just trying this thing out, you don't have to commit your whole life to it. But all that to say, success is a lot easier than we think it is. You got to just do the right thing. Do right by your customers. And I say this for myself as someone who I'm constantly thinking about, praying about, meditating on how do I do the right thing consistently? How do I avoid mistakes, avoid distractions, avoid shiny objects, surrounding myself with good leaders in my life where when I've convinced myself something's a good decision, I can have someone else to say, hey, you know what? I don't know about that. That doesn't sound like that aligns with what you care about. Because we have our biases and our blind spots, right? So I say all this not as an expert, but as someone who's on that journey as well. Hey, thanks for listening to the Good Advice podcast today. I really appreciate it. If you're a first-time listener, what the heck are you waiting on? Click that subscribe or follow button wherever you're listening to us on. And don't forget, if you want to support the podcast, you can jump on our Patreon, patreon.com/goodadvice. Or if you're a business that wants to advertise on the podcast, you can always reach out to me at goodadvicecoaching.com. That is today's good advice. See you later.